The visitor sticker was already crooked on Isaiah Rowan's folder. A white rectangle, black ink, one line too small for anyone rushing through the lobby to notice. Temporary service corridor access. Under that sticker sat a bound proposal for a $200 million anchor investment in Whitlock Pryce Systems. Isaiah noticed the label before the receptionist handed the folder back. He did not peel it off. He pressed one thumb along the corner so it would not curl, then looked past the desk toward the guest lounge. A consultant in a navy overcoat had just walked in without a badge. The receptionist smiled and lifted the gate for him. "Mr. Albright, they're expecting you upstairs." A banker behind him had forgotten his identification. Someone called security and cleared him by name before he finished apologizing. Then the receptionist looked at Isaiah's suit, his shoes, and the folder under his arm. "Please wait by the freight corridor. Someone will come down for you." The bench near the corridor had a metal frame and a split in the vinyl seat. A cleaning cart stood beside it with a folded caution sign tucked under the handle. Across the lobby, the guest lounge had leather chairs, lemon water, and a low table stacked with business magazines. Isaiah sat on the bench. He placed the folder on his knees and checked the calendar invite on his phone. Anchor Investor Review. Host, Grant Bell. Location, Executive Boardroom. The invite was still there. Grant Bell arrived 20 minutes after 9, with his tie slightly crooked and his tablet tucked under one arm. "Mr. Rowan?" he said too softly. "I'm sorry. They should have sent you up." Isaiah stood. They printed the wrong access category. Grant looked at the sticker. His fingers tightened around the tablet. "I'll fix it upstairs." He did not fix it downstairs. They passed through a brushed steel turnstile, rode the elevator to the top floor, and entered a hallway lined with framed patents, acquisition photos, and smiling portraits of men whose names were carved into brass plates. The boardroom door was already open. A long table waited inside. Water carafes, glass tumblers, a conference audio puck in the center, its small red light blinking at regular intervals. 12 executives sat with laptops open and agendas turned to the same page. Dane Whitlock entered last. He wore a dark suit with silver cufflinks and carried nothing. Men like Dane did not carry folders. Other people carried facts toward them. Grant stood. "Dane, this is Isaiah Rowan. He's here for the Capital Review." Dane stopped at the head of the table. His eyes moved to the sticker first. Temporary. Then to Isaiah's suit. Then to Isaiah's face. "This is the capital partner you cleared?" Grant swallowed. "Yes. Rowan Bridge Capital." Dane turned to Isaiah without offering a hand. "Our board-level investor sessions are for pre-approved attendees." Isaiah opened the folder. "I am pre-approved. Your office sent the calendar invite. This table does not take unsolicited material." "It was requested." Dane looked at Grant. "Why was this attendee classified through service access?" Grant's mouth opened, then closed. Isaiah set one page on the table. Capital structure, timeline, funding conditions. He turned it so Dane could read the heading. "If I have 5 minutes, I can walk through the structure." Dane placed 2 fingers on the folder and closed it. Not hard, not loud. Worse than that, casual. One page slid from the edge and landed beside a glass tumbler. No one reached for it. Isaiah picked it up himself. He aligned the corners against the folder and smoothed the crease with his palm. Lena Park, the compliance associate near the far wall, looked from the folder to the blinking audio puck. Her pen stopped above the minutes template. Dane leaned back from the table. "Grant, note that an unapproved visitor interrupted the investor agenda." Isaiah looked at the conference puck, then at Lena's empty line on the template. "Please attach the calendar invite to those minutes." Dane's jaw shifted. Isaiah lifted the folder from the table. The crooked visitor sticker caught against his sleeve and tore at one corner. He pressed it flat again. He did not defend his suit. He did not ask Dane to say the quiet part clearly. He did not ask anyone in that room to become brave all at once. He walked to the door. Grant followed him halfway. Isaiah stopped, but did not turn around. "You knew the invite was real," he said. Grant looked down at his tablet. Isaiah stepped into the elevator alone. When the doors closed, he called Julian Marks at Rowan Bridge Capital. Julian answered on the second ring. "How did the review go?" Isaiah watched the floor numbers begin to fall. Pulled around. Julian did not ask him to repeat it. Back upstairs, the calendar invite still sat open on Grant's tablet. It named Isaiah Rowan, as the anchor investor. Did you notice what the badge called him instead? Try them again. Dane Whitlock said it from behind his desk without looking up. Grant Bell stood in the doorway with a printed withdrawal notice in one hand and his phone in the other. The notice had arrived before sunrise through the investor relations inbox. 3 paragraphs. No threat. No explanation beyond the one sentence that mattered. Rowan Bridge Capital withdraws from lead participation in the Whitlock Pryce funding round, effective immediately. Grant had read it 6 times before walking down the hall. I called Julian Marks, Grant said, twice. Call him a 3rd time. It goes straight to voicemail. Then email. I did. Dane finally looked up. A fountain pen rested across the quarterly forecast on his desk. The cap had rolled near a paperweight shaped like a small glass tower. Then wait, Dane said. People like that enjoy making everyone chase them. Grant's thumb pressed against the side of his phone. People like that. He did not repeat it. By mid-morning, the investor tracker changed color. Rowan Bridge's row went from green to gray. Redstone Ventures shifted to yellow. Harbor Ninth moved from active to review. The cells updated one by one, each small square carrying more truth than Dane wanted in the building. At noon, Redstone called. Without Rowan as lead, we are stepping back. The call lasted less than a minute. Dane called legal. Legal said the term sheet was non-binding. Dane called investor relations. Investor relations said the remaining investors were asking why the lead had left. Dane told them to say, market timing. He told Grant to say valuation. He told communications to prepare a line about strategic patience. No one said boardroom. Not yet. On the product floor, an operations manager placed 3 vendor invoices into a blue plastic tray marked pending approval. The tray was already full. Near the engineering bay, a rollout board still listed a customer pilot for next month, but the parts order beside it had a new stamp. Hold. A procurement analyst took a photo of the stamp before sending the file to finance. She did not know Isaiah Rowan's name. She only knew the money had stopped. Grant knew more. He knew the meeting title. He knew the man had been expected. He knew Dane had closed the presentation before it began. At 3, Marianne Carver called for an informal board update. Dane kept it short. Capital markets moved. Rowan got cautious. Grant looked down at the call log on his phone. No return calls, no opened emails, no conversation, just a door shut from the other side. Marianne asked, did anyone speak to Isaiah Rowan after the meeting? Dane leaned back. There was no meeting. Grant's pen stopped. Marianne's voice came through the speaker. Grant? Grant looked at Dane. Dane looked back. The pause became its own record. We should wait for legal before characterizing it, Grant said. Dane smiled at him for the first time all day. That evening, Rowan Bridge Capital released a public announcement. Not about Whitlock Pryce, about Northline Dynamics, their direct competitor. $300 million strategic investment. The press release included a photograph of Isaiah Rowan. Modest suit, plain tie, calm face. Beneath it, a short biography. Founder of Rowan Bridge Capital. Infrastructure investor, managing partner, national portfolio across logistics software, industrial automation, and enterprise systems. At the bottom was one quote, capital follows judgment. Dane read it on the large screen in the executive conference room the next morning. He did not sit. He stood with both hands on the back of a chair. Grant stood near the wall. Lena Park stood beside the document cabinet with a sealed media drive in her hand. Marianne Carver joined by video, her face clear on the screen. Send me the meeting record, she said. Dane turned. There is no useful record. An unapproved attendee disrupted the agenda. Lena looked at Grant. Grant looked at the floor. Marianne said, then send the access history. Dane's head moved slightly. Why? Because someone got him into the building. Lena opened the visitor management archive from the compliance terminal. She did not touch the media drive yet. She searched the date, then the name. Isaiah Rowan. The entry opened. Original category, capital partner. Manual change, temporary access. Edited, after check-in. Grant read the lines without blinking. Dane said nothing. If Isaiah was only an unapproved visitor, why did someone change his access category after he had already arrived? Marianne Carver wrote one word in the margin before anyone sat down. Preserve. The board evidence packet lay open in front of her, clipped with a black binder arm and stamped for emergency review. Beside it sat a transcript excerpt, a badge audit extract, in the first internal summary Dane Whitlock's office had sent to counsel. The summary was short. Lead investor declined to present after disagreement over terms. Marianne read that line twice. Then she placed her pen beside it. Across the table, Dane adjusted his jacket and remained standing. Grant Bell sat 3 chairs away, both hands folded around a paper cup he had not lifted. Lena Parks stood near the file cart, with the transcript binder pressed against her ribs. Marianne looked at Grant first. Did Isaiah Rowan decline to present? Grant did not answer quickly. Dane did. He left. That was not my question. Grant set the cup down. A brown ring appeared on the cardboard coaster. No, he said. He asked to present. Dane closed the materials before the review began. Dane turned toward him. Careful. Marianne nodded to Lena. Read the excerpt. Lena opened the binder. The plastic tab clicked under her finger. Her voice was plain. If I have 5 minutes, I can walk through the structure. Then Dane's line. Grant, note that an unapproved visitor interrupted the investor agenda. No one touched the pastry plate in the center of the table. Marianne turned another page. The badge audit says his category was changed after arrival. Who approved that? The records manager, a small man from facility systems, looked at his access sheet. No approval code was entered. Dane spread both hands. This is clerical. A bad label. A tense morning. A misunderstanding about fit. Lena's eyes moved from the transcript to Marianne. Marianne heard the word. Fit. She circled it once. By noon, the vote was complete. Dane Whitlock was removed as Chief Executive Officer for cause. His severance was suspended, pending outside counsel review. His unvested equity was frozen. His authority over investor relations, capital strategy, executive hiring, and board-level meetings was revoked immediately. His building access ended before lunch. There was no farewell email with soft language. No transitioning to pursue other opportunities. The board notice said what the record supported: discriminatory conduct toward an invited capital partner, material damage to a funding round, attempted mischaracterization of meeting events, and failure of executive judgment. Grant Bell received a written reprimand for not correcting the record when he knew the truth. He was named acting finance lead for 30 days, not interim chief executive. Marianne wrote that line herself. Silence under pressure was not a leadership credential. Lena Park was moved under board compliance protection. Her job title changed 2 weeks later, not as a reward for drama, as recognition that she had kept the first version from being cleaned. Renee Calder's financial column ran that afternoon. It did not quote gossip. It cited the capital shift, the board notice, and the transcript excerpt. Clients read it, lenders read it. Northline Dynamics read it from a renovated office where Rowan Bridge Capital's new term sheet was already under review. Whitlock Pryce did not vanish. Companies rarely do. It shrank. One division was sold. Executive bonuses were frozen. 2 client renewals were paused until the board completed an outside governance review. The investor relations team had to send a correction to every party that had received the first explanation of the failed funding round. The correction did not say market timing. It said the lead investor had withdrawn after executive conduct during a scheduled capital review. Then the personnel audit opened. Darius Hill's file was the first one reviewed. His performance scores had beaten 2 promoted managers. His project margins were higher. His client retention was stronger. His denial note had 1 sentence underlined in blue. Not the right client-facing profile. That sentence did not survive the audit. Darius received a corrected promotion record, back pay, and a board-level letter acknowledging that subjective language had been used without measurable support. 3 other files were reopened the same week. 2 more employees came forward after they saw Darius's correction entered into the system. 60 days later, Whitlock Pryce issued a new governance addendum. Investor attendees tied to funding rounds had to be verified against the deal owner record before any access change. Manual badge edits required a reason code, a second approver, and automatic compliance notice. No executive could remove an invited investor, vendor, or candidate from a senior meeting without written justification and witness acknowledgement. Draft summaries had to keep correction history attached. No clean narrative without the first version. Any use of fit, polish, presence, or client comfort in a negative personnel or meeting record triggered board compliance review within 24 hours. A final clause was added after Marianne read Lena's statement. When an employee knows a meeting record is false or incomplete, silence is no longer treated as neutrality. Isaiah did not attend the announcement. That Saturday, he sat at a folding table inside a Brooklyn entrepreneurship center with 12 young founders and a stack of marked-up business plans. A radiator knocked against the wall. Someone had brought coffee in a cardboard carrier. No one wore a tie. At the edge of the table sat a photocopy of the new badge edit rule and a thank you card from Lena. Isaiah placed both inside a plain manila file. He had no need to frame them. The badge had called him temporary. The record made Dane permanent. This story is a work of fiction. Names, companies, places, and events are invented for storytelling purposes.